Yes,
Ashley,
happy
welcome.
Thursday.
So, I guess before we get started with the topic for today, which is always a big discussion around all the parts of the world, let's
Mhm.
talk a bit about your concert. Because 2 weeks ago, we talked about one of your favorite musicians.
Oh
So
yeah,
let's. I know you put out an awesome video. I had a chance to watch most of it,
yeah.
and it sounded like a magical experience. Was it everything you thought it would be, or was it way beyond that?
So I've really I work my butt off a lot to try to live life with no expectations. And I will say this is probably something I did walk into with some expectations because I was like, I can't wait. I'm so excited. Um, so I'm very grateful that the ego didn't take that opportunity to then like sabotage. Instead, it was like I couldn't even have imagined what was there. And to me, that's a true representation. I mean, I'm not going to like give it my entire video up, but that's a true representation of
Yes.
what that concert was. It was spirit. And spirit, like, not only does it never disappoint, it always like blows any idea you have out of the water because you are not aware of your highest potential, right? Your highest self, your spirit, whatever. You're not aware of what's truly possible. So, like, when I have these expectations for Jacob's concert, because I believe he's coming from spirit and the people he brings with him, it blew my mind. Literally blew my mind. And it was like a complete mystical experience the entire time. Um, at one point I wondered, like, have we arrived? Is this where we spend the rest of our life? Like the rest of like eternity? I don't know. But yeah, check out that video. Like it is just, yeah, so
And it's on our
magical.
channel for those wondering. Go to Big Miracle Energy on YouTube and you'll find the videos posted yesterday, right? Or the day
Yes,
before.
yesterday. You'll see me, my head, and then I put Jacob on a mushroom. He's like sitting on a magic mushroom. Because that's really what
Beautiful.
it was. Like, yeah, it literally, when I describe it, when I think about it, I'm like, it was a mushroom trip in the Garden of Eden without the mushrooms. Magical.
Now, isn't it magical? Yes, indeed. Okay, so for those of you listening, go check that out on her
Yeah,
channel.
Jacob Collier. I don't know if we say his name, his full name at all. We've been just saying Jacob like he's our friend. No,
Yeah,
Jacob
exactly.
Collier. Jacob
Great point.
Collier.
Great point. Okay, Ashley, back to the topic at hand. And this came
Money.
up because we were talking on your Patreon call last week. And this is a big discussion among pretty much everyone, right? And I
Mhm.
know I've struggled with money limitations, money beliefs, material beliefs in general. So I thought it would be a great topic for us to dive into because I'd imagine anyone listening will feel very similarly when it comes to money.
Money. Right.
So
I mean,
you
well, go
start.
ahead.
No, you start. You start.
Well, I was just like thinking, I was like, literally anyone can relate to what our conversation is going to be because money is like a construct within an illusion created to keep you stuck. So no matter if you don't have money or you have a ton of money, there's always some sort of narrative operating in the background. Like I know plenty of
Yeah.
people that have tons of money and it's still not enough, or they have tons of money and they feel shame and guilt that they have money and other people don't. Like there's always, unless I believe you've intentionally done some work, or maybe you were raised by parents that were very aware and had already unpacked a lot of their narratives and maybe grew up out in the woods with no access to the world. I mean, honestly, because it's constantly, I was having a conversation the other day with a friend, and they just shared that, they're really on this journey of unwinding the mind as well. And they have this child that is young in their teens and is watching TikTok and is like, I want Lululemon, I want this, I want that. These people are going to the beach, these people are going to that, which it's experiences, it's things, but everything comes down to what? The green crap that really doesn't exist. What it is, stupid paper or useless paper and stupid coin or and metal or whatever, like essentially, discs. So it's like pieces of paper and little discs we put so much weight into, when in fact, like, if you really took a step back and looked at it, you would laugh. You would be like, this is absolutely ridiculous how we let something so silly control so much of our lives, our mental space, our emotional space, our, families get ripped apart because of money. The majority, I don't know, I'm awful with percentages. You're really more of that guy, like the sciencey guy, but this isn't even science, but it's still like percentages research. But I think like a very high percent of divorces are because of money issues,
Oh
because
yeah,
of
there's a
like
lot.
yeah, like what? And this was like if we go back, Constantine, if we go back to like, I don't know, I don't even know how old money is. It's not that old though, right? Like money has not always been around, so that's even like mind blowing more that man created money.
What we did, because so one of my mentors actually, who I respect a lot, we were breaking down money beliefs, and we looked at it as just the energy of transaction or a transaction, right? And in the past, I would trade my chickens for your cows and vice versa, right? And that would be the energy of the transaction. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't money. There could have been gold bars and silver bars and whatever. But that's, like I said, fairly recent, because trading was what used to be the case. Because I would be good at something, you'd be good at something else, and we'd trade that, and then we would all have the things we need and want.
Right.
And then this money thing came about.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I don't know. It's, for me, money was something that really always found its way into the ego. Like I feel like when I'm ever focused on money, it's really I'm coming from a place of the ego, because I'm coming from a place of lack, right? Whether it's I need more money, I want more money, I don't have I have too much money. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever said that, honestly. Like even like the richest people in the world, I don't even think would say I have too much money. I mean, like look at Oprah. She's like a gazillionaire, and she recently just like left Weight Watchers so that she could make deals with like diet shots, right? That's about money. That's not a like that's money. Like really the basis of that is money, period. And so nobody ever says I have too much money. So that means everybody is always sitting in a state of lack, right? Always, 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 no matter what's in your bank accounts, there's a piece of your mind sitting in a state of lack. Well, the ego, fear is separation, sacrifice, lack. Love is abundance. You have it all. Like there is no lack. So you are constantly allowing a piece of yourself to sit in the ego, period. No matter how much you try to do all of this other hippie woo woo or unwinding your mind or personal development or any of that, if you still have any sort of relationship with money, really at all,
Yeah.
then you still are sitting in a place of lack.
Yeah. And I brought up, because we're talking about numbers and stuff, right? And I like to do the research when I can. So there's some interesting stats I had pulled up here earlier, and you're talking about this too already, right? But the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysts, IDFA, some people may be familiar with it. Financial disagreements, like to your point, are one of the leading causes of divorce. In their studies, they often find that money issues, including disagreements on spending and different financial goals, contribute significantly to marital breakdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a study by Kansas State University that analyzed 4,500 couples, indicated that financial arguments were somewhat stronger predictors of divorce than any other type of disagreements. Right? So that if you look at what could predict that a couple would divorce or separate, money issues is the biggest predictor, right? And then if you look another study or survey rather by SunTrust Bank, this is some random bank in the States. Of course, financial stress was identified as a major factor in relationship stress, and they only found that 35% of respondents experiencing relationship stress blamed money as the primary cause, so 1 in 3, which seems a bit lower than what I would think.
Mm-hmm.
But that brings me back to something else that I've realized more recently, is how honest are people, or not really how honest even, how honest are you with yourself that the issues you're having are because of money or something else?
Boom.
right? Because it's like it's so easy. And let's take money out of the equation for a second. It could be material things, right? You don't have the house you want, you don't have the vacations you want, you
Which
don't
goes
have.
to money though. Like I feel like
It
let's
does.
keep it at money, Constantine, because it's like the house and stuff is a whole nother layer deep. So at least we're unpeeling to the level of money. So I would
Yes, and
invite
let
you
me
to stay
give
at
you the
money.
last one. The last one here, which is interesting because it will give us more to dive into. So this is a study published in Family Relations. The research found that couples who disagreed about finances once a week were over 30% more likely to get divorced than couples who disagreed about finances a few times a month.
Mm.
Now, this is just comparing people that disagree about money, period, right? Like it's not even comparing to people that don't have any issues or maybe, once or twice a year. So it's like looking at weekly versus bi-monthly, let's say, right? Or bi-weekly, which is
Right.
actually impressive to me because obviously the more you bring an issue up that doesn't get resolved, the more likely it is it will end up causing a separation of sort.
Mm. Yeah. Well, so I mean, that's like a whole nother story we could have another day about the difference between like a special relationship versus a holy relationship. So, the special relationship piece is like seeking our salvation in something. So to me, it's like multiple layers deep because most likely you're seeking your salvation in your partner. And then you're also seeking your salvation in money. So then when they like cross, it's a huge mess. But I want to go back to your piece, so Constantine, where I was like, boom,
Yes, let's do that because it was
everyone
powerful.
hides behind money. Like the majority of people hide behind money. You know how often I hear the excuse that money is what's holding people back from doing X, Y, or Z. And it's like you said, it could even be the house, or I don't have the car, or I don't have this or that, but it all comes down to money. And so often people hide behind it, whether it's they don't have enough or they have too much, right? Like I can't hang out with those people because I have way more money. That's not where I go because I have way more money. Oh, I can't go there because I don't have enough money. That's not where I can go hang out because I don't have enough money. It's
Yeah.
always this money is the high behind. And of course, like when it comes into like personal development and bettering yourself and investing in yourself, that is like a whole nother ball game. People use money as a constant excuse because we're taught like nothing nothing good should cost money. It's and nothing good is easy. Like I'm unworthy. It goes into all these other narratives that money is so ingrainedly woven. But the thing I want to make sure like people understand in this conversation, we're not just talking about people who are lacking money. I'm talking about people who have money as well, and how they're always still sitting in a sense of lack because they're always planning on how to multiply that more. Even if they sat here and said, "I have plenty of money." Right? I'm fine with how much money I have today. But if you look at how they're spending, how they're investing, their intention is different, right? Words and intention, it doesn't matter what your words say. It's what's going on in the mind that actually matters. So if you're constantly like planning for the future and trying to expand it, you're still coming from a place of lack. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, right? Because living in the illusion, there is like a piece of ego until you've completely unwinded. But if you don't have awareness of that, then that
Yeah.
can run your life from the background. And so I think that's why a lot of times when you get an abundance of money, I don't even want to say abundance because it's never abundant, but whenever you get a larger amount of money than you're used to, don't fool yourself that all of a sudden you're not sitting in a place of lack. Right? Don't fool like unless you've really shined that light and brought that darkness to the light and you can 100% know it because you've looked at it, don't fool yourself.
Yeah. And you brought up some amazing points, which I have on this other screen here. Another thing that I would add, which was interesting to see when it came up as part of the research, which touches on a couple of things you said there, but financial infidelity. So there was a survey that was done that found that essentially about 2 in 5 adults who have combined finances, so this means all your finances are together in a relationship, admit to committing financial deception. So that includes things like lying about spending, hiding debt, or keeping secret accounts. And I know I've been doing that in the past as well. So I know this number is probably low as well when it says 2 and 5. I would probably see that more as a 4 and 5, but that's just my biased opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you're the stats guy.
I don't know. It's just I find it interesting, right? Because as you start looking into numbers, as you start looking into what they have found, I mean, all of these studies can be biased, right? Because you don't know what sample size they look at, you don't know what population they look at, right? So we don't want to generalize, but we know that these, even if it's, let's say they say it's 2 and 5, even if it's 1 and 5, it points to a larger problem in society, which is part of it
Oh
and
yeah.
part of as well, which is all these money beliefs that, right, if you spend on yourself, it can look bad, right? So then you want to hide it.
Well, I think
If
it wraps into like so many layers again of specialness and multiple, it's like combining multiple ways of projecting out your internal fears, right? Like one way we project out is in relationships, another way we project our relationships with people, I mean, another way we project out is a relationship with money, another way we project out is, a relationship with food, a relationship with alcohol. So then all of a sudden when we combine more than one of these together at the same time, it's like catastrophe when it blows up, because it's like so many layers of specialness within specialness on specialness everywhere, and specialness will always disappoint. It will always end in death and destruction and pain and suffering and all the things, because you're seeking something in something that you will never actually obtain, right? We're seeking abundance in money that you will never actually be able to obtain, and that's a part like we might end up differing in our conversation, but abundance isn't in money. Money is another distraction and illusion for you to believe that that you can find abundance within the illusion. But as we can see, there's people with abundances of money, and they're still some of the most miserable people you have ever met. They still have regrets. They still, Steve Jobs, I'm not saying he was one of the most miserable, but he had regrets on his deathbed, and one of them was spending more time with family, right? So money didn't equate, or abundance of money did not equate to happiness for him. And abundance is something that is found within. And as long as we continue to distract out with money, I promise you, you will always end up with, sacrifice and separation. Your money, you will always be separated from it at some point, because either you will die and it can't come with you, or
yeah,
you got to pay your rent, or you got to pay another bill, or you're going to go buy something at the store. You will always be separated from it. So it's a constant like, hey, here's something. Oh, wait, now you're separated from it. So it's like the constant reminder of separation when you're looking at it from the ego's lens point.
I love that, Ashley, so much. And what came up for me as you're talking, I mean, a lot of things came up, but one of the things that came up in relation to the event I hosted earlier this week, what I wonder how much of these issues are even about money and not just anything material, anything that separates us from our source in a way. Because in my case, earlier this week, I mean, you know the story, but for those listening, there were some complications with the registration document I received from the event team that helped me put the event on Thursday, which was a great success, by the way. But the error
It was
led
really
to
good.
yeah, the error led to me not seeing any registrants until like the day before the event. So you can imagine my turmoil to be like, what's going on? I've advertised this. So many people have been advertising on my behalf. People said they will be coming, and all of a sudden I have no registrations. It turned out, of course, there was just an error in the automation system of where people got registered and how it got transferred to the document I had received. But it was enough for me to spiral down on Tuesday, so 2 days before the event, to a point where I couldn't necessarily focus on preparing for the event, doing my regular job, or anything else that was important to me, because I had these limiting beliefs coming up. Am I doing the right thing? Am I good enough? What's going, have I wasted my money working with this team? All these beliefs. And in the end, yes, part of it came down to money, actually, I would imagine, but part of it was more like, ooh, but I wanted people there in the seats. And now that I think of it, maybe it was because it was like number of people in the seats means number of potential sales, right? So it could always come
Right.
down to money.
Hmm.
But I wonder if it's just a material thing, right? Because if you replace money with gold bars, or if you replace money with whatever other currency we end up using, cryptocurrency, which is still money, I wonder if it's more than just money. Because in my case, I was stressing out about a number. It just didn't happen to be money; it happened to be number of people.
Hmm.
And when I was able to break that down, everything changed for me.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always the remembrance that it's really never about any of that. It's always about the belief that I'm separate from God and that I'm not actually. So I'm constantly trying to fill that void with things. And, I set expectations of how that void can be filled. So, like, just your example would be like, oh, in my mind, my void would be filled if 10 people signed up, right? I'm throwing a number out, and then they said 0, so the void wasn't filled. So then you were like super lack and disappointed and not worthy, because it reiterated that narrative that you're separate and you will never obtain it. And then all of a sudden it happened, which gave you a dopamine hit, and it was beautiful and it turned out beautifully. But it won't be long lasting if that's where you are seeking something from, right? If there's It's always checking your intention and remembering that truly nothing in this illusion can bring you happiness. I truly believe that nothing in the actual illusion can bring me happiness or influence my happiness. It is only within myself, and it is only me unwinding the mind of remembering that true happiness is within. True happiness has nothing to do with the things outside of me, and has everything to do with my remembrance and my connection to spirit and God, that in fact this is all an illusion. And that, like, abundance isn't here either. That's within your abundance. Like, I don't know if we talked about this on here. I thought we did a live on this. Where do you get your abundance from?
We did
I thought
some, we
I
did
thought
some
we
on
did
that.
some. Yeah, but it's like, if you seek your abundance in the illusion, right? Whether it's abundance of love from others, abundance of money, abundance of cocaine, abundance, whatever it is, if you seek your abundance in the illusion, then you'll always be disappointed, because you will always experience separation, and it will never be like constant, right? Let's say you seek your abundance in your job, and then you lose your job and you're devastated, because your security, your safety, your abundance was located there. So the key is tapping into the well of abundance that is within, and that's your, like, direct line, your direct connection to spirit, that is your ultimate guide, that is like wholly abundant, that is like this limitless well of abundance that is never ending. And as long as you listen to spirit, you will always get exactly what you need to help on your journey. And that's kind of where our conversation led last Sunday, about how when it's for spirit and necessary, it will always be free. And I don't mean free like free. I mean, like, you will always have the means to obtain what is necessary on your journey. So let's say you really want a Rolex and you're pissed off because you're not getting enough money, because obviously that's an ego want, that's an ego need. It could actually be a spirit aligned thing for someone, because let's say them going to the Rolex store, they meet someone and have a holy encounter and it heals some sort of blah blah blah. Like, it could actually be. But if you're forcing and you're upset, and it's not happening, and it feels fully guided by ego, a want in order to feel, prestigious or more gain, then it's like you're not spending your money with spirit, so it will run out, because that is not what spirit is seeking for your journey. David Hoffmeister has a perfect thing, like, who are you choosing to spend your money? Fear or love? Ask yourself in the moment, who is spending this money? Fear or love? If it's love, it will be abundant. If it's fear, it will not be. And that will probably freak some people out, and they'll be like, but that doesn't make sense. I want a mansion and all these things, and it's coming from love because I love my family and I care about them. That is special love. That is not holy, abundant, eternal love. That's special love in the illusion of believing your family is separate from you and that the only way they are going to feel love is if they have a mansion. That is special love. I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent.
Oh my God, that's a beautiful part to stop at, because it got me thinking about quite a lot of things there. Special love versus spirit love. That's a different discussion, I would imagine.
Mm. Yeah.
But why? Let's break that down further, though. Let's say one thing I mentioned for your family.
Say what? Say
You
that
said
again.
one thing to mention for the family, right?
Yeah.
So how is that not coming from love? Let's see. Because it help me understand. I'm not sure I fully understand where you're going with that. Saying, yeah, you know what, I want the best for my family. How is that not coming from love?
So that's not. So wanting a mansion for your family or wanting the best for your family are two different things to start out with, right? You are saying that the mansion is what's best. You have no clue what's best for your family because you can't see the whole script, period. But like a whole nother layer, right? This is going deep into the metaphysics, is you don't like they're not separate from you. Right? Like you're acting like you need something for something externally from you, or something is not going to turn out correctly.
So in that case, then you just say, well, okay, what's best for me in the moment? I would love a mansion for myself, and that's it.
That's not what's best. Why the mansion? Like who told? Like where do you come up with that? That's best. You have no clue.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't want one, but I'm using your
No, but
example.
I'm saying, like, in that example, though, you have no clue what's best for you. And that's the biggest understanding, is you have no clue what's best for you. And I'm going to bring up our conversation about your event.
Sure, yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, please, yeah.
So you messaged me that there was 0 people and you were feeling down, and that you had a call with the people that were helping you put this on, and they said to you, do you want to reschedule it? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, you show up as if, we talked about how even if no one shows up, this is an amazing recording you can have, amazing opportunity. Spirit, for all we know, like, what if it was actually the navigating of the event is what meant to happen and not the actual event? Like, you never actually know. And if you would have used your I know mind in that moment, like allowed yourself, you would have rescheduled that event, and there was like 35 people at that event, Constantine.
Yeah.
And I bet you $1,000 million bazillion that I don't have, but I'll bet it to you that if you would have rescheduled that event, at least 50% of those people would not have come to the rescheduled event.
Yeah, probably. Very likely, actually.
See, you don't know. And in that moment, you allowed yourself to lean in trust, because you also go deep into your meditation and have really been building a beautiful relationship with your guides. And they kind of nudged you, I think, in that moment to not make a full committal decision in that moment when they asked you, and to kind of lean in.
Yeah, because that was, so that happened Tuesday morning. I was debating, and I'm like, okay, really? And then all the limiting beliefs or the beliefs came up and sent me for a spiral. And then I finally got myself to a place to meditate for a few hours, and everything got unraveled to the point where, coming out of the meditation, I was like, yeah, so if it needs to be rescheduled, it gets rescheduled. If it doesn't, I'm going to show up. If it's just one person, I'll show up as me. And that's it. And I'll do my best job. And literally in that moment, that night, everything, it's kind of like a veil got lifted. Like all the pressure I felt, all the separation, perhaps is the word here, all of it disappeared, vanished. I was like content. I was just fine. I was just happy, right? And one of the messages that came up in meditation was, why don't you write an email to your list from the heart? Because up to this point, I had used the marketing emails, which weren't necessarily me. Well, actually, I shouldn't say necessarily. They weren't me.
Right, let's be honest. I called you on that too.
You did. And you weren't the only one. And then I write this email from the heart. It's a longer email, almost like a newsletter. And then I had people reaching out to me that I didn't even expect they would open my emails or care about. It's like, man, that was a beautiful newsletter. Do you do this often? Do you do it on LinkedIn? I'm like, no, I'm just starting. And I was like, wow, that's beautiful. I mean, people took the chance, they read it, they felt connected because it was from the heart, not some marketing gimmick. I'm sure it brought some people to the event. I didn't actually check on those numbers. But what happened is, so that night I went to bed, I was like finally relaxed. I was like, I wasn't tied to the outcome of the event anymore. Like how many people showed up, who would buy my, or who would decide to work with me after. Any of the stuff was no longer relevant. So then, when I wake up Wednesday morning, funny enough how all the things work, right? I woke up with a dream that there was an error in the connection between the two systems. And that prompted me to email them. And it took them a while to get back to me until like Wednesday late afternoon. But I wasn't spiraling anymore. I was like, whatever. I mean, if there was an error, perfect. That means we have people registered.
Mind you, everyone, the event's on Thursday. So we're like the day before.
Exactly. Yeah. The event was this past Thursday.
You didn't say that. I was like, so like Wednesday, you still like have no clue, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So Wednesday I have no clue. And you know how it goes. You can spiral again. But for some reason, I was calm. No, for some reason, I know why, because I broke it down the night before in meditation. But I was like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I knew I had some friends showing up like Ashley and a few others. So I'm like, you know what? Worst case, I just show up, I do my thing, and then we'll go from there. And if it needs to be rescheduled, because this team, they had a lot of people that would manage the event, so they had the say if the event would go through or not. I'm like, I'll deal with that. It's not a problem. All of a sudden, get an email in the afternoon, hey, you have a bunch of registrations. And then things went from there, right? And it was a beautiful lesson in trust. Which
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just want to point something out, because there's like this false... We've talked about this on the Patreon too, and it's one of those that kind of blows your mind a little bit, but you understand it. It's releasing the weight in order to have an outcome, right? Remember, Constantine, we talked about that. So it's like if Constantine would have listened to his guides and then thought, oh, if I do what my guides say, then a lot of people will show up. So if I don't care, then they'll show up. Right? Then that's still putting weight on it. Then you're just not caring in order to get something. Like, a lot of times we do that in manifesting, and that's a whole different road we can go down, where manifesting does work, but also ties into the karmatic and divine timing and all this stuff. It just shows you the power of the mind, but it also can be very shaming and guilting, because it's one of those methods. It's the method of, I'm going to release my beliefs around money and allow it to flow in. Well, you didn't release shit, because you're only doing that because you want it to flow in, right? Like, and I bring this up because Constantine had a beautiful outcome. And I think that's where you're at right now in your journey of trust, is sometimes you need those nudges, those reminders that, yes, I'm here to hold you. But that's not how it's going to happen every time. Constantine could have trusted and still showed up with one person, but he would have felt amazing. That's the point of trust. The point of trust is not the outcome. The point of trust is your experience of everything, right?
And that's why I love you brought it up, because here's the interesting thing for me, actually, which I did not expect to blow my mind away, in a beautiful way, as I was realizing what happened after the event. So I was preparing on Thursday for the event, because, of course, Monday and Tuesday were a wash in terms of preparation, because my mind was somewhere else, worried about the registration.
Waste of time. Anyway, yeah.
Right? Time was spent on something else, something that wasn't productive, let's say, for myself. But maybe it was, right? Because it got me to where I am today, right? So that all time is...
I know. I always say you can't even waste time. So I just completely...
Exactly, right? But anyway. I'm saying from the outside, it looked like wasted, because I was like, well, but you have to prepare. You have to do this. You have to do this. Mm-hmm. Yet, it was preparing me in a different way, which brings the point you brought up earlier, which is you don't know what's best for you. That was best for me in the moment, because those lessons that I got reminded of, well, what did they lead to? I showed up at the event with like zero expectations. I just showed up to share my light, share what I've learned, my journey, inspire people. And then the feedback has been amazing, but it's not the most interesting part to me, because I was like, wow, that's awesome. But now in hour 3, right, of the 4 is where, after we go pretty deep, there's a link that the team puts in and says, hey, if you want to work with Constantine, go check out the program that he put together. I mean, it's just an optional thing that people do. And then we continue teaching, right? And then we went for a break. We came back, and I completely forgot what the team said, which was, hey, if anyone applies, we'll celebrate them. And if not, we'll continue, right? And I was just at the break. I was just preparing for my next, or the last part of the presentation, right? Because I was going deep into my system. why it works, how it works, and how people can apply it in their life. If they work with me or if they don't work with me, it doesn't matter. And as I'm getting ready to start speaking, I see Dustin, my co-host. He's like, "Oh, we want to celebrate person A and we want to celebrate person B." And all I could think of was like, "Wait a second, I forgot about this part. This is awesome." And that's essentially, when you look at these events from a, let's say, a material point of view, which I did in the past, that's the whole outcome you want out of these events. It's like people to sign up to work with you. For me, and I was telling myself this as a lie initially, I was like, "Oh, I want to give back," and which is true, because I honestly love doing that and love seeing people get excited and inspired and empowered, which is what happened throughout the event. But I bet you without those reminders the 2 days before, I would have not shown up like that, and I would have always spread in my mind, well, there's this many people, I need to get this many people to sign up, I need to get this many sales, whatever the case. And I would have not been able to come from the heart as much as I have.
Yeah.
And, upon reflecting on it, I was like, wow, how important those 2 days of misery were for me to be able to show up the way I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like hindsight's 2020, right? We always say that, but I want to just like focus in on a key point you said there, because to me, that's like where I'm on my journey of every moment of getting. So being in the now means you would always be surprised like that, right? So like every single moment, like all of a sudden I'll be like, "Oh, I gotta hop on a call with Constantine." Okay, yep. And even today, it actually kind of was that. Usually in the past, you and I would be like, "Hey, what kind of what topic should we talk about?" Blah. And we didn't. We just hopped on, and you're like, "Hey, what about we talk about money from Patreon?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. I don't have anything else. Let's go. Let's riff. Let's go." Like surprise, like in the moment, instead of all of this pondering and planning and preparing. And sometimes spirit has you plan, don't get me wrong, but it's a surprise when it comes up. Like, "Oh, I should buy a ticket to Thailand in 3 months." Right. And then like that's how spirit surprises, that's how spirit plans, is because you're living in the now. So granted, they had already told you that. Why did you need to take any time on it? Because it wasn't in your power.
Right. And it's funny because I'm looking back at some of the feedback I got, right, which I've shared with you. But I'm like, just, looking at one of the ladies that applied to see if we are a fit to work together, when she was brought on the screen, and I don't think you were at that part, Ashley, we were like, "Hey, what made you decide to go all in on yourself?" And she goes like this. She goes like, "I don't know where to start. Let's just say I had an awakening. I was saying in the chat, I'm reading the transcript I put here, I prayed for clarity and truth, and boy, did I get it. Tsunamis came at me, and it was really hard. It was almost like it's like a new me, Thank you guys for doing this. This is great." And then she had another personal bit I took out because it was too personal. But literally listening to her, I was like, I cannot believe I get to do this. Like me talking with Dustin and everyone else that had the input there, we are helping people change their lives for whatever better is for them. And I'm like, there was so much gratitude that came upon me during that and after, when people reached out. I was like, "Man, this is amazing." And the feedback that I got. And to your point, is like being in the moment. That's all. I couldn't think about the past or the future. In that moment, I was sitting with this beautifulness. I was like, okay, it doesn't matter what happens next. If anyone buys or not, that's irrelevant. This moment, how you feel right now, it's important. And have I done it every time? So I haven't been in the moment ever since? No, not really. I got pulled out a few times. But it's such a beautiful reminder of how, yes, if you sit in that moment, if you come from the heart, if you come from your light, it's just simply magical. And then money issues disappear. All these things disappear that don't hold any value over you, right? Any hold on you anymore.
Yeah, I want to clarify the money issues thing, because I don't think everybody will understand where we're coming from, and tell me if I'm wrong, Constantine.
Go ahead.
But like for me, we talked a lot about money at our Patreon call last weekend, and from an outsider, they would be like, oh, Ashley must be like making tons of money because of where I'm sitting and where like I present myself, and not like I present myself like I used to in the ego buying first class tickets and stuff. Like I had a lot of money, but money just isn't a thing anymore. It just is. And by no means do I have a shit ton of money, but by no means am I unsure how I'm going to eat tomorrow, because I know I will always be held. Period. That's the
Yes.
difference. I know I will always have what I need in the moment. And I got to share wait, I don't know if I shared this story on Patreon. No, I don't think I did, Constantine, but
Mm.
you asked me recently, what stories do you have, Ashley? And
Yeah. Oh,
I
yes, 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 yes.
I said I had a story. I think maybe I did share this on Patreon. Anyway, so when like probably a few years ago, I started just like doing things left and right, random acts of kindness. I found when I was in like really dark stages that it helped me get out. And it makes sense now because we're all one. So subconsciously, when I would do things for others, I was actually doing for myself. So, like, I would go randomly to a drive through and buy the people's food behind me. It was very money driven for me at the moment, but it's
Mhm.
still just like money was just like the means to the love, to the content, to the extension I was attempting to be without knowing. And so, like, when I lived in Minnesota, in 1 month I dropped thousands of dollars at Starbucks buying gift cards, and I was just constantly doing this, even though my money intake was going down and down and down. I still was just shelling out hundreds here, hundreds there, buying people this, buying people that. But there was these homeless men in St. Petersburg when I moved here. And that's when my money started to really go down. That's when my business, like, boom, fell apart, right? Like, I was making tons and then I wasn't making any, but I still never lost that want to just like give, especially when I wasn't feeling well, to just like extend, extend, extend. I didn't realize that's what I was doing, was extending love to myself. And so there was this gentleman that he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, can you get me some dinner?" And mind you, I think I was at that point getting notifications that became just like second nature on my phone every time I ran my credit card that said, you're over your balance, you're over your limit, you're near your limit. You know, like every single time I swiped that thing, it said I was there, and the limit was $40,000. And that was a moment I bought him some ramen or whatever, but I still have faith, right? Because I cleared away all the money blocks. Money's going to come in for sure, right? I'm manifesting. At that time, I think most of my dollar bills were gone around my house, but I think it was like Jen Shapiro from You're a Badass at Making Money, or it was Gabby Bernstein, talked about laying dollar bills all throughout your house so that you could like normalize money. So I had like
Mhm.
$100 bills in my veggie crisper in my fridge and like all over my house, and I slowly was spending those, and I think they were gone by this point. But ultimately, I was like down to almost nothing at that moment, but I knew it was coming in. I knew it was coming in. Well, a couple months later, it hadn't come in, and I was really at a place where I was at like just this dark place, and decided I was going to become homeless. I like called a friend and said, "Can I send you my books? And I can call you and you'd be willing to pay shipping whenever I needed a new book to read." Like, I had it all laid out. I was like, I need to suffer, because like, I not consciously but subconsciously, I now see it was like, really, I needed to suffer because I got myself in that predicament because I way overspent and I was living the high life and blah blah blah, and I was so focused on being wealthy and how important that was and how everybody else without money wasn't worthy. And here I was going to be homeless. So I was going to take my camera, I was going to document it all. And that also probably was ego driven, right? Have a YouTube channel. Like, let's document it. But okay, so months had gone by and I'm like at my wits end. I had just gone to the coffee shop, had just got notification that I didn't have any money left. And I was walking home and this guy's like, "Hey, Ashley." And he was on a bicycle and I'm like, "Huh?" And I didn't recognize him. And he's like, "Hey, it's me." And I can't remember his name right in this second, but I was like, "Oh, Joe." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Joe." He's like, "Yeah. Remember you bought me dinner a couple months ago? I now have a job and I have a bike and I have an apartment and now I can buy you dinner." And I was like, you have no idea. And to me, in that moment, it was spirit reminding me that it's not about the amount, it's about being held. And you are currently held, and it will work out, but it may not work out the way you think, right? Like, it's not always going to be exactly as you believe it should be. It's not always going to be, sunshine and daisies and rainbows, unless you allow yourself to shift your perspective and be surprised in every moment and okay with what every moment it is. David Hoffmeister, I love it when he says this. He goes, truly living in the now means every morning when you wake up, you're like, yay, it's raining today. Tomorrow, you're like, yay, it's a tornado. The next day, it's like, yay, it's sunshine. You are never upset for what you get because it is the present moment. So you are not comparing it to the past or using it to predict the future. Therefore, when it is a rainy day, that's all that exists in your world is rain. When it is a hurricane, that is all that exists in your world is a hurricane. So it's that surprise. It's that moment of like, this moment gets everything out of me. I know that was really long.
Now I'm smiling here. That's such a beautiful story, actually. Yeah, you did say it last week, but nobody else heard it here, so that's good for them to hear because it's such a powerful story of how these reminders pop up in our life. And I would imagine, and I don't want to make an assumption on your behalf, but maybe I will this time. In that moment, you didn't realize what you just said, which is that you're always held, right? I would imagine that if I look back at my scenarios, like I remember you and I had a discussion, what was it, like 4 months ago now, when I decided to look at my bills at one point, and I'm like, man, this is a lot of stuff. How do I pay this? I knew how I would pay them. Like deep down, I knew how they would get paid, but that pulled me out of the moment, right? To me, the past and the future. And you challenged me. I think it was the day after. It's like, were you okay in the moment?
Mm-hmm.
Were you taken care of in the moment? And I was more than taken care of in the moment. But our mind, or ego, whatever we want to call it, pulls us out of that so quickly.
Mm.
And then you can't enjoy the moment because you're thinking, oh, if I treat myself now, or if I do this now, then what's going to happen later?
Yeah. And it goes back to asking yourself, like, really, I've made a habit of this. And I know our friend Evelina has as well, as like, who am I spending my money with? Who's spending my money right now? Fear or love? And asking yourself that, because if like, you're like, oh, you have your last $100 and you're like, well, Ashley said, live in the moment. So I'm going to go buy this t-shirt I've been wanting because I deserve it. A lot of those words that I just said are fear. Words of fear, right? Things that come from a place of fear. So you need to check in. What's my intention? Am I feeling guided to get this? And we had another beautiful share in the Patreon last week about being guided to buy cookies instead of putting gas in their car, and to buy this blender, and like different things like that. Like, you will get tangible guidance, but it's not this self-righteous guidance, right? It's just this knowingness within that, like, okay, yeah, this is what society would tell me I need to do, but this is what I'm really feeling within, and not feeling from a place of I deserve this, or feeling from a place of if I don't have this, then I will die. Like, that's, sacrifice and separation. So that, of course, is along the journey of unwinding your mind and really leaning into it. Like you, Constantine, you've, last 6 months now, I've really leaned into building a relationship with your guides, and I'm sure you're able to like hear them more and more outside of meditation, because you've tested the waters, right? In moments where you thought they were guiding you, you made that decision and realized, that wasn't them, that was my ego. And so you get to know, like, what is my guides and what is actually fear, and then you get to discern that, and that's part of just the journey overall.
It is.
So yeah.
I think that's a beautiful spot for us to bring it home. I mean, we covered a lot of topics, right? Not just money, and if money is through abundance, and it's definitely a topic that will come up and up all the time, right? And it's a topic that we've all been challenged with many, many times in our lives and still are. I know that like you said, despite my connection to my guys, my work in this area, there will still be times when this comes up if I pull myself out of the moment, which happens more often than not, right? And I wonder, the same mentor I mentioned earlier, he has a phrase which I love now, and I'm copying it. It's, how does he say it? It's, you're never not human, something like that, where it's like, you are human in this experience right now, which means that you will have to, I don't know, you don't have to, but you get to go, you get to face those challenges of being human, which is to go to the past and to the future and not be fully present in the moment. I'm not sure how you feel about it, because I don't necessarily see a way in which one can get to a point where it can be 100% in the moment. I'm sure that, there are enlightened beings that can do that, but most of us, I don't know.
But we all have the opportunity to become enlightened. And I think that's do we have something? I'm going to open a note right now, because I think this would be a good topic to talk about too, is that this goes again kind of into our discussion about Jacob Collier and how we're quick to put labels on people that distance us from them. And so it's not that it's not possible. It's that we're putting up barriers to believe it's not possible for us. Everybody has that ability to unwind their mind and at some lifetime experience enlightenment before they lay their body aside. And every time you tell yourself you can't, you're making a fake barrier that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue anyway of why you're not experiencing enlightenment and why you're here, is because you've created a shit ton of barriers. And that's the road to enlightenment, is removing all barriers to your truth, which is that of eternal love, which is the remembrance that you are love, which is so silly because why do we create all these barriers? But I think it would be a good discussion to have, that you can be Jesus, you can be Mother Teresa, you can be Buddha. Granted, we've turned them into false idols. They are far from that. They are the same as you and I. And it just so happens that they were famous, right? It's like you being a good singer. There's tons of good singers out there. There's tons of singers out there that are better than Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
But she's the one that everybody worships as an idol. But that doesn't mean that other people can't be better than her. That doesn't mean that other people can't be the same as her. So why, in our minds, when it comes to awakening and enlightenment, do we immediately put a box that's unobtainable?
And it's
that's
funny,
the only reason you're here.
What came up to me when you said better than Taylor Swift, all that, right? It's like, better in which way? Because everyone has different definitions. Make more money, have more fans, transform more lives, impact more people. What's the criteria we're going to go by? Because there are singers, for example, like Jacob Collier, for example, not as much money, not as much of a following, but his music has much bigger impact at the soul level. Right? So that's another conversation, but that is beautiful to see, right? Because it's again, labels and definitions and what we look at ourselves. Ashley, beautiful conversation, went in many directions. Let's tell people where they can find you and tell them about the video again, because that's an awesome video.
Yeah, so I can be found at bigmiracleenergy.com, Big Miracle Energy YouTube, and Big Miracle Energy Patreon. And the video that came out, it is a number 2 in a multi-part series. It's a wide open series on Jacob Collier, but it's my experience at his concert. And it actually gives you the spirit-led things that occurred to even get me to the concert. It's a very guided mystical experience, all of it, and that it literally, I don't even know what the title is. It's something about Jacob Collier's concert, but the thumbnail is Jacob sitting on a mushroom and it says Jacob Collier. That just came out.
The title, actually, it's an unforgettable Jacob Collier concert experience, a spiritual journey. So
Yes.
that's what you
Yes.
can find.
It's absolutely amazing. There is another Jacob Collier video on there as well. And like I said, it's open ended because Jacob, I have found, is a massive mirror for myself of remembrance. So at any point, I may feel led by spirit to do another video. So make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications. One last plug, Constantine, the Patreon. So if you love watching Constantine and I, next Sunday actually is our live Patreon call. So there's been like 8 of us now, 8 or 9 of us that hop on. We chat about whatever comes through, and just have a really beautiful, deep conversation about some of these metaphysical topics and spirituality and blah, blah, all things. But it is live here, streamed on YouTube. We would love for you to join us. That is on Big Miracle Energy Patreon, Right Minded Thinker, and you can be a part of the conversation too, twice a month.
Awesome. And on my end, we were talking about the event earlier. It was such a success, such great feedback. We're going to do more of those.
When's the next one?
We'll figure out a day, sometime in June.
Okay.
I'm hoping sooner rather than later. But you can find out more at calmsuccesslife.com. And then, of course, Unleash Thyself, the podcast. I just released an episode yesterday with a psychologist. It's also deep into spirituality. So it's really cool to see the two areas merging even more these days, right? Like someone that has a doctorate in psychology, but also extremely spiritual. And that conversation was one of my favorites. So go check it out. It's on my channel under Unleash Thyself. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ashley. Beautiful conversation. We'll see you again next week at the same time.
So much love, everyone.